adepts, friends, fans, family, and followers to Season 4, Episode 3 of the hit underground occult radio show known as Knights of the Nephilim, brought to you by Celestial Oddities Radio and the Coterie of Semil Arcane Occult Order. As always, it's a pleasure to have you listening in this evening. I am Reverend Frater Crow, and I want to thank you for your patronage and support. Whether you are listening live, streaming after the fact, or you're downloading it to your device for on the go, either way, I would like to thank you for your patronage and support. Make sure you click the like, share, and follow button on whatever platform you're tuning in from, whether it be iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Amazon, Google, YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. We air across absolutely everywhere and anywhere in between that I might have missed. So listen where you feel comfortable, but by clicking the like, share, follow, and subscribe buttons, it moves us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives. Not only of this show here, Knights of the Nephilim, based upon esoteric science, occult doctrine, ritual magic, interviewing and talking with the biggest and best authors, practitioners, ritual tool makers, theologians, and mystics, or maybe be one of our other two shows, Pair of Normal Guys podcast, which goes by Pong, where we talk with specialists in the field of paranormal and supernatural phenomena. We bring on, great different personalities within that field, deep dive in discussion and topics, as well as our special shows where we bring on listeners just like you to call in, tell us your strange and extraordinary stories of the unexplained. Or it's our last show, Uncovering the Underground. Almost 100 episodes aired of that show. We recently retired that, but it covers music to modeling, stars of the big screen, comedy, oddities, and everything in between. So we're always aiming to give you great quality entertainment and thought-provoking content. So make sure you share it around to everyone out there. And if you'd like to support the show throughout the evening, we'll drop a couple QR codes across the screen where you can take a picture of that and feel free to donate to the show. It's Buy Me a Coffee. That's a new feature of the show. But your fuel of the coffee that you're getting me gets me through the day, and your support gets me to make more and more content. I really appreciate that. If you're listening out there and you've never seen us visual, this season 4 is the first time we've done the video element to it. So if you're listening out there on Spreaker or iTunes, know that you can go to Instagram at Darkness and Divination, Facebook at Knights of the Nephilim, Frater Crow and Celestial Oddities pages, or YouTube under Knights of the Nephilim, and check out a video component, see our guests, see my lovely face here, and join us in that regard as well. Never hesitate to comment. We love to read off your comments and questions for our guests each and every show. And for those that are new, we air every other Thursday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you a new guest each and every time. So, make sure you set that to your calendar and keep an eye out. Before we start our guest this evening, I would like to give a special thanks to our sponsors, Arsnosis, Arachne Arcane Services, Goetic Impressions, The Telemancer, Little Shop of Lilith, Belladonna's Botanicals, and Limitless Liberations for all that they do for the show and for the radio shows that I run elsewhere. And we'll be stopping and taking a little bit of a commercial break throughout the evening, listening to a little bit about each of these shops, where you can check them out at, and any specials that they might be running. And we always ask that you support them. They are some great, great companies. So without further delay, with all the house cleaning items now out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into a little bit about our guest this evening. And here in a moment, we'll go ahead and bring him on. Our guest this evening is the one and only Lon Milo DuQuette, who is a singer and songwriter, recording artist, and humorist. He's a world-renowned author of over 19 critically acclaimed books that are translated in over 12 languages on magic and the occult. Critics have called him one of the most respected and entertaining writers and lecturers in the fields of the Western mystery traditions. Since 1975, DuQuette has been a national and international governing officer of the Ordo Templi Orientis, one of the most influential magical societies of the 20th and 21st centuries. He is currently the Order's United States Deputy Grand Master. He is an internationally recognized authority on tarot, ceremonial magic, and esoteric Freemasonry. Although he takes these subjects very seriously, he tries not to take himself too seriously. This rare combination of scholarship and humor has earned him in the last 30 years a unique and respected position in American spiritual and esoteric literature, and it certainly has done that. So, ladies and gentlemen, grab your, athames, put on your ceremonial attire, light your candles, and focus your desires. Step into the circle and intone the sacred names. Give offering and praise as we stare into the flames and conjure the one and only Lon Milo DuQuette. All right, folks, we're here live with Lon Milo DuQuette. Lon, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for that very kind introduction. You made me feel like, well, maybe I should just die now and quit while I'm ahead.
No, you got much more to put out. You have been putting out books for years, and I think there's so much more that needs to come out from you because you have a strong voice, and I think you've influenced just countless thousands in the occult. So I know a lot of people are very, very excited tonight to hear what you have to say. So thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure being here.
So, you had an interesting journey along the way, and I normally start very traditional on my shows on how someone kind of got into their journey. Now, obviously, I know that there's many different pieces that you could pick from that journey, but when you think back on getting into occultism and getting into esoteric sciences, was the moment when you were a child? I know that there was a vision, which will lead us later into the book that you just recently released, but I know that there was a vision as a child of Jesus, and I know that there was a pretty interesting occurrence that happened there that kind of changed the direction of your life, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell the listeners out there kind of what your childhood was like and how that kind of sparked a whole different path than what I think everybody would have thought you would have journeyed into?
Well, briefly, it was a nice, white middle class family. I don't have too much to complain about parenting, the usual whippings, but not abusive or anything. But they did discover that I had bone disease in my hip. Just as I was learning to walk, okay? And when, I'm sure you know this, that when you start to walk and become mobile, you lose a lot of the sort of infantile pre-linguistic thoughts, okay? Before you have language and before you have mobility, you're sort of half still in that in-between incarnation consciousness, prenatal consciousness kind of thing. So you're not thinking in words, and you're not thinking. You're still, as the Kabbalists say, you're still plugged totally into your neshama, and so just as I was starting to walk and get out in the outer world, they discovered I had this bone disease, and of course they thought it was, polio. But thank God it wasn't. But it did require me to go back into the crib to be immobilized for a couple of years. And I was allowed, and I loved it. Okay, I was allowed to just drift in and out of consciousness 24 hours a day. It's like 20 minutes awake and 20 minutes in a dream state and 20 minutes awake and 24 hours a day. I didn't sleep through the night, or I wasn't awake all day, kind of thing. And so I was thinking these thoughts that we all probably think, or the variety of thoughts that we all have when we're very, very young, but we lose them once we start to become mobile and language centered, and tie our thoughts to words. Okay, and so I had visions, if you will, that didn't even seem like visions, just sort of like memory snatches. And this is before television. Okay, so I had no outer influence of television or movies or anything like this. This is 1950, and but I was dreaming I was other people, and with events that didn't freak me out or anything. It seemed like I had a very recurring uh, episode where it appeared that I was in the trenches in some kind of combat of some kind, explosions, things like that. The sound of dirt clods on my helmet, and other visions where I was getting into the most beautiful little roadster about 1929, 1930, cruising down the what later I would discover would be the Coast Highway. And it was just, I had, I guess, visions of previous incarnations that seemed quite natural. But part of the thing, my mother was more or less happy to leave me pretty undisturbed throughout the day. So it was a pretty blissful kind of
Kind of a happening, yeah.
I can't complain. But anyway, she when she did interact with me, and my father worked usually all night in the oil fields, she would teach me to pray to Jesus every night. And my mother was sort of what we'd call evangelical today. She said she was a Methodist, but she didn't know what that meant. And she'd teach me at bedtime to go, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. That just freaked the daylights out of me. If I die, what? Yeah,
What is this about?
What's this? Take my soul before I learn to use the toilet, And it was a bit traumatic, and she'd give me little copies of the Methodist Church published a little publication called The Upper Room. And it was just a miniature booklet that came out every month, but it had classic, like Renaissance paintings of religious themes and things on the cover. And she thought that would be healthy for me. And I sort of enjoyed it, and it sort of gave me this spooky, mystical, Renaissance-y kind of Christian mysticism air. But then my mother, in an attempt to, I guess, indoctrinate me into what she thought was her brand of Christianity, she said if I misbehaved or sinned, that Jesus would send me to hell, and that hell was a place where you have a nightmare that you can never wake up from. And that was absolutely terrifying. And that I got so mad at whoever this Jesus character would, that he'd do that to a little kid that was just pretty much enjoying himself, laying in bed, looking at the ceiling. What have I done that would deserve that? And she just more or less said, well, we're all born that way. We're born ready to go to hell. And I thought, this can't be right. Later on, I'd find out that pretty much is that's the drill. That's the doctrine of total depravity, that we're born that way. But anyway, we went. This is a long story. You really
Oh, you're fine.
You really kicked off on a long story here. But anyway, I wasn't going for it, but I still had that waxy buildup because, it looks like some grown-ups are believing in this stuff. We went on vacation in Nebraska, and I got food poisoning from my relative's food. I described the food, but it wasn't California food. Okay, it was Nebraska food, and it poisoned me, and I got violently ill, and I was throwing up all the way home, and diarrhea, and all. Oh, just terrible. And they had. We got back to my aunt's house, and they gave me, sort of primitive remedies of different kinds of enemas and okay. Anyway, I was just traumatized, yes, terribly, and I had a terrible fever, and I fell asleep. Finally, I fell asleep, and then I was so sweaty that I had to pull the covers sort of off my face, and I looked at the foot of the bed, and there was freaking Jesus standing at the end of the bed with his arms out like this. And I go, oh God, if I die before I wake, oh God, I pray that I'm not ready. And I thought, I'm having some kind of a dream or nightmare, and I pulled the covers up over my face, and I couldn't stand it any longer. And I sort of peeked one eye over the covers, and he was still there. Okay. Wow. I said, oh man, he's objectively there to take my soul. And anyway, the more I'd play hide and seek with him, the more he was there. He didn't seem to be moving on me, but just sort of kind of rubbing it in, And finally, I prayed to him and said, "Look, I'm not dying. I just had diarrhea, okay? And I'm not ready for you to take my soul anywhere, And if you had any, if you're any kind of a god whatsoever, you're not going to be terrorizing little kids like that. You ought to be ashamed of yourself." And but anyway, I eventually lost consciousness completely, just totally freaked. And then next thing I was aware of, I could hear the like sparrows chirping out in the shrubbery out under the window, and I knew it was daylight. And so I peeked out from under the covers, and it was my mother's yellow dress that was hung on the back of a door that was right behind, right at the foot of the bed. And I knew right then that there wasn't a Santa Claus, there wasn't an Easter bunny, and Jesus was just a yellow dress, and I had nothing to be afraid of from that quarter. And it was all in my head, and I'm over that now.
I love that.
So that's that story. That's Jesus is a yellow dress story.
I think that got your mind thinking different right then and there to be able to really change a lot that was to come for you in everything. I mean, not only the Jesus story, but the experience with being kind of bedbound there for the first part of your life. As you said, you didn't get programmed like a lot of other children, do, and you had time to just kind of go in and out of those past life experiences, which really opened you up spiritually in this life. And then that experience kind of, as you said, made you realize that these things aren't real. These are ideas inside of our mind. But I think also, like I said, paved the way for many things to come, including what we'll talk about a little bit later on this evening, which is your brand new book.
Well, yeah, obviously it did. And I was always, I always had sort of this dual relationship with the church. And in my case, it was the Methodist church. I loved the church. I mean, I loved the building. I loved the inside. I loved the sanctuary. I loved sacredness. I liked the smell of a church. Okay. I like the candles. I like the singing. I like the church, but I don't believe in God. Okay. That was my, you know, I wouldn't mind spending my life in church, but I don't believe in God. That would be the one thing. There's the rub, you know. And I even when I was around, I don't know, 11 or 12, I even told my mother, you know, I think I want to be a Methodist minister when I grow up. And she almost melted, you know, with, oh, yeah, that would make me so proud, Lonnie. But the reason I wanted to be a Methodist minister is because you work one day a week. You live rent free in this beautiful Victorian parsonage right next to this 100-year-old church. You got a beautiful hot wife, okay? And you just, maybe you work on Saturday as you type out your thing, and you lead people singing, and you make them feel good, you know. So that's what I want, you know. But I won't be able to really talk about Jesus because he's just, you know, he's a yellow dress. But anyway, Nebraska was so boring that I really did enjoy volunteering to sing in the what they called the carol choir, the children's choir. And that's kind of where my love of music and, you know, I could learn to sight read and things like that. The choir director for a while was my piano teacher. And so this got the music end of things going in my life. I'd come in on Saturdays and fold the bulletins for the next day's service. And then on Sunday morning, I dressed up in cool cherubic robe. And that's where my love of dressing up in magical robes started too. And I'd dress up in this robe, and I'd get, when the music started and the service was getting ready to begin, I walked down the aisle with a candle lighter thing, big pole with a candle on it, and I ceremonially walked up to the altar and dutifully lit the candles on the altar. And for some reason, there were different number throughout the year for some reason. And then at the end of the ceremony, I ceremonially walked in after everybody had left, and I unlit the candles. So I opened and closed the service every week, and in between, I stripped out of that robe and I ran down the street across Frankfurt Square and went to the drugstore and bought myself a tuna salad sandwich and a cherry phosphate. And I slurped that up and ate that sandwich and looked at comic books. And then I ran back to the church, put on my robe so I could snuff the candles out at the end.
I love it.
Life was sweet.
No,
And it,
absolutely. Sounds like it.
yeah. But okay, let's get me out of Nebraska here.
All right, we're traveling out of Nebraska, but no, it's interesting because once again, just like that last part that we talked about, is that really, made up the makeup of what was to come. Because as you said, love or hate the church or love or hate Abrahamic faith, the church and ceremonial in mass is very much a large ritual. And as you watch it and you can admire it for what it is, as you said, the songs and the vibrato of the hymns and the candles and the robes and the colors and the incense and the scent, it's very much a large scale ritual. So, a lot of us started out that way and then kind of reached into other things. But I agree with you. I started out as someone who went to Catholic school, and I had to witness a lot of mass and be at the church all the time. Now, I grew very heavily from that, but that definitely made up the makeup for me of loving ceremonial and ritual. So it's amazing how that works out for a lot of us. So for you, obviously that was a big part, but when did it first start leading you into the mystery traditions? I know that early on you kind of were hungry and had a passion for finding out esoteric science and looking into companies like Amorc, which for those out there is the ancient mystical order of the Rosicrucians. And I actually had looked at some of their lessons in the past. And I think I felt like you. I mean, it was a good start, but for me, and I think for you also, as you said in one of your books at one point in time, it didn't feed enough at a time. So it was very slow, giving you something and then a month later, a little bit more, but it still was something that's great and still around today that is kind of a primer for a lot of people to jump much deeper into it. So if you don't mind, tell us kind of how that was when you first started that side of it and learning some of the mysteries, how it kind of opened that thirst for more and more.
Well, literally the minute I graduated from Nebraska high school, I shot back to California, the place of my birth. It's a long story why I spent 10 years in Nebraska, but to go to college. And I enrolled at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California. It was known as the #1 party college in the country at the time. Look it up. This is 1966.
Great time to be in school, and especially at a party school, huh?
The party school. And when I was still in Nebraska, a couple of years earlier, I had read these articles in like Look magazine or Life magazine, lame magazines, but about Timothy Leary, Dr. Timothy Leary, and this drug or this substance called LSD. And that some people called it the God drug. And the article is a pretty good article for 1964 or 65 when I read it. And it treated this subject as not an intoxication thing, but literally a mind expansion experience that was having profound effect on people's lives. And when I read about it, I said, the first opportunity I get to take some of that LSD stuff, I'm going to do it. And so I moved back to California, and of course there was the 1966. Okay, I didn't attend college; I attended the 60s. Okay, and like I always do, I accidentally got a job singing at a saloon in Belmont Shore, and on my first break, I went in the bathroom to relieve myself, and there was a nice-looking, kind of halfway long-haired hippie kind of guy standing by the stalls, and he said, would you like to buy some LSD?
It was meant to be.
And I said, I sure do, and it was like $5. And in those days, it was even before sugar cube type thing. It was in a capsule about the size of a large, this colored, okay. This is before window pane or blotter or anything like that. This was just, who knows how much was in there, And after my last set, I lived about 20 minutes away down the Coast Highway. And I said, well, I'll just pop this in my mouth here as I'm leaving, and I'll drive home along the beach, that night was the most incredible experience. And I won't bore you with I saw God on acid kind of thing, because it wasn't like I saw God on acid, but I saw myself big time. And I just realized that I am much bigger than I thought I was. Okay.
Understand
As a matter of fact, everything that I've been hearing about what people have been trying to say about God is so big, it's this same thing, and it's me too. It's, I don't know how to explain it. I'm just, frying on acid. But all I knew from that night onward, that discovering more about me, of identifying, to making my self-identity and center of consciousness, that thing, that singularity that I became, that was going to be the only thing in the whole universe, in my whole life, my whole incarnations, whatever. That's the only thing worth doing with my life. Okay. And I was hearing a lot about Dr. Timothy Leary, who later I'd have the privilege of, well, anyway. And he was into like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And he was, through that milieu, that's when I was introduced to Alan Watts, and that's when I became at least a wannabe poser Eastern mystic, and on and off for a few more years in a very unrecreational way, but in a very serious setting, mystical taking of LSD, including one incredibly wild experience on the desert in Joshua Tree. That's where I became a mystic. That's what's got me going. And that's what eventually got me introduced to Paramahansa Yogananda, his work. And I started doing yoga and things like that. And Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna. And for Hatha Yoga, Vishnu Devananda, I remember that name. But it seemed like I was trying to play Eastern software on my Western hardware.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does.
And it's just like I'm naturally comfortable with accepting the fact that what I'm observing, what I'm manipulating, what I'm working with outside of me is inside of me at the same time. I'm comfortable with that. I don't know why. It might have been all that time in the crib. But I've always realized that, hey, there really isn't an outside of myself. Even the stuff that I'm seeing that looks like it's outside of me, I'm processing it inside.
Yep.
No, there is no outside of me. And so I'm very comfortable doing stuff outside of myself, like ritual, like using ritual tools that represent inward things. I don't need to strip things away. I'm so lazy. I'm stripped away already. So it was like, I wish I could find something comparable to this glorious stuff that's really inspiring me with Eastern mysticism, but without kind of going in it against my nature to be happy internalizing everything I do externally. And that's magic.
Yes, very much so.
That's ceremonial magic. And it took me a while to come to that conclusion. And the first thing that the gateway drug, the bridge between Eastern and Western was, God, I wish there was a Western Tao Te Ching, that inscrutable tiny little book, the Tao Te Ching, spelled Tao Te King, I wish there was a Western one of those. And I ran into a Kabbalah book called the Sefer Yetzirah.
Yep.
And it's about the same size as the Tao Te Ching. You could leave it in the bathroom, and
yep, it's a quick read.
Yeah, it's a quick
read, but it's a quick read.
Yeah, but it still does the same thing. And I said, now I kind of see you're dissecting objective reality. Tao Te Ching, like like Zen Buddhism, sort of makes you go crazy in a socially acceptable way, but it requires you to rise above the thinking process. In the Kabbalah, that'd be the Ruach, your intellectual life. You're trying to explain everything to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of stuff you can explain to yourself, but it gets so good. There's stuff you can't explain to yourself in words. Just like me laying in the crib, not requiring words and language to process this stuff. And that's the next higher level of consciousness. So Zen sort of, and the paradoxes of Zen koans and things like that are sort of meant for you to go, okay, I can't figure that out with my meat brain, but I think I get it with something else. Okay. And Kabbalah does that too, only it does it with stuff outside of yourself. Let's play with numbers. Let's play with mathematics. Let's play with letters of words that are numbers. And until you go crazy in a socially acceptable way and you step out of that. But that Kabbalah was the kind of the first step. Okay, now I'm sort of seeing what a magician does when a magician makes a temple. Oh, I get it. I get what the circle is. Yes. Okay. And my circle, I've got the divine names around my circle. And I bathe myself. I just clean myself all up. And I put on clean robes, and I take my clean body and my clean robes into my clean temple, and I stand in the center of that circle of the universe, and I got a wand, which is my will. And okay, you see where I'm going with it.
Absolutely. No, it's very, very powerful. And And it's funny that you said that, because along my path, one of the very pivotal things for me as I started studying Hinduism and really loved the culture and still keep some of those pieces in my practice today. But same as you, a part of me didn't feel right with it. I'm like, I love the story. I love the mysticism. I love the idea and even the work. And I still, would have never been able to do the things I can today without that, because the meditation and the mantras and mudras I picked up from that side and still use them. But it just didn't fully resonate with me until I found the Kabbalah. And when I started studying the tree and started, as you said, it's bringing in numbers and planets and colors and God names and the angel choirs and everything together into one. And it just boom, and then you're sitting there and you're like, I can't handle this. How do I take all this in? And you have to sit and absorb it. And then it raises you to the next level. And then you absorb, and then your conscious just keeps rising and rising and rising. And for anybody who doesn't,
just moving one from another to another to another.
Exactly. Yeah. Move your way up to the crown, and you do just that. I mean, you raise your consciousness and understanding of the universe. And to someone who doesn't practice that or study it, it's hard to ever explain what that really does. There are different systems out there than the Kabbalah, obviously, but it is, to me, the most powerful system to really understand everything. It's a metaphysical system of metaphysical systems. I mean, it's an umbrella for dozens and dozens of other systems within themselves: astrology, numerology, gematria. I mean, it's really profound. And that did the same thing for me. I discovered the Sefer Yetzirah, and then what really did it for me was the Sefer HaBahir. When I read the Bahir, I just did something to my soul that I'll to this day never be able to explain to someone.
And the people that are have laid it down so cleanly were the illuminated individuals. Okay.
Yes.
And it's not because they're abnormally illuminated. That's the natural state for all of us. Okay. We all should be that awake. Okay. And I know that the term, especially in Florida, is a terrible word. No, our natural state of being is that awareness. Okay. And anything less than that, okay, this is who we are up here on the top. Okay.
Yes.
That's who we are. That's who you are. That's who I am. As a matter of fact, I am you and you are he and we are we. No, okay.
Yep.
Okay. We're all going to wake up one of these days and realize that we've been each other all along. Okay. This is who we are. And this is kind of asleep and dreaming we're this. And this is a little deeper asleep, and we're dreaming that we're that. And this is even deeper sleep, okay? We're asleep. We're dreamers that are dreaming a dream inside 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 a dream. And all we have to do is not do anything but wake up. One dream at a time if we have to, or just lots of, like the beautiful movie Inception. Did you see the movie Inception? I just said, oh, this is such Kabbalistic fun here. But in a sense, that's what we are. When strangers looked at Buddha and they saw that his face was all lit up, and he just looked so cool that you could just tell there was something wonderful about this guy. In the same way that any decent yogi walks into a room and the room lights up. and the smile, and you just know that this person is enlightened. And the strangers saw Buddha and said, "Are you a god?" And like in Ghostbusters, "Are you a god?"
Good God.
But in this case, it was, "Are you a god?" And Buddha said, "No, no." He says, "Are you an angel?" He says, "No." And says, I think they even asked if he was, a holy man or a monk or a Buddhist, or they didn't ask if he was a Buddha. But he said, "No." He says, well, what do we call you? And he says, "I'm just a guy who woke up."
Yep.
Just say, "I'm awake." And that's pretty much what the Eastern mystic and the Western magician is into. Even if you're as wild and crazy and have as bad a reputation as the naughty Aleister Crowley, he was shooting for Buddhahood too.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a little courage for you to see the light in the darkness. But truthfully, if you can't find the light in the darkness, okay, you're not going to find it in what you think is the light either. So you just better get used to just opening your eyes and taking it as it comes, because everything is there to help you wake up.
It is, and especially the darkness. I mean, most people don't want to face that part of themselves and hide from it, but that's the very way that you're going to raise that consciousness is by going into the depths of darkness. And yeah, you got to get to the supernal triad, Folks, for those out there that don't know this, and this might be an aha moment for several people, when we talk about Satan, when we talk about the adversary, when we talk about that aspect of it, let's take a whole different perspective real quick. Let's not look at it as a person or a being. Let's look at it the parts of evolution and creation. If you go to the Kabbalah and you look at the Sephirotic tree, when we get up to Binah, that is Saturn. And when you're looking at Saturn, that was when the stages of creation then created from the supernal triad below and created. You could look at that as being the evil inclination or the Yetzer Hara. You could look at that as being the moment that Satan was born, because that is also the supernal mother. And that's when, through the bread of shame, it gave back to the God force its own energy and said, "I want to create." And it created lower and lower stages. Well, that's symbolic of Saturn. Saturn is Satanas, Satan. And that's why there was always those connections there, because that is the supernal mother that created materiality. And materiality is evil in a way, supposedly. So if you want to look at it that way, the supernal mother, or Binah, is Satan. It's a principle. It's not a being. It is a principle of creation of reality. And a lot of people, that's way too heavy, and you can't understand it on a base level unless you raise your consciousness up to actually understand those words. You hear it right now. Some of you might get that. Other people say, "Oh, that sounds fancy," but you'll actually absorb that message and realize that is what it is. It's the stages of material creation, has been named after by fanciful stories that we entertain our minds with. And as Lon said, by doing the ritual baths, by putting on the ceremonial robes and being cleansed and standing in the center of the world with your wand, you are taking on that God force within you and standing up, and you are directing the choir, or the symphony, so to speak, and bringing about the things within you outside of you. And as he mentioned, the great Aleister Crowley, a lot of people, especially in the left-hand path of things, will argue, well, Aleister said that everything is internally inside of us and parts of our psyche. And then you have other people that argue, no, it's all outside of us. It's both at the very same time. And most people,
otherwise.
Yeah, it can't be otherwise. That's the only thing there is. So this big debate of spirits are tangible outside of me. Yes, they are. Spirits are also inside of me. Yes, they are. It's the divine paradox. Everything's a paradox in the end. That's how it works. And just things like Satan, as we talked about, that is the principle of creation of reality. That's the principle of materiality. That's why there is the chasm of the abyss that you must climb up to and cross the abyss to get the supernal triangle, to get to the adversary, to beat that, to reach back up to Keter, to come into contact with your true essence. And that's the route. And it's a roadmap. It's a beautiful laid roadmap, but it's not going to be without its pitfalls. You're going to wreck. You're going to have some crazy things that happen. And as Lon said, even Crowley, the most revered man in history in occultism, he was aiming to be a Buddha as well. But it doesn't mean he didn't have his own faults, because the road to light is through darkness, as we said. And in that darkness, we can lose ourselves from time to time and have some faults and things that we have to discover in order to continue to rise up above those levels. So I just wanted to throw that perspective out to some of you listening, that a lot of people want to think about it all the time in its true story form, but they don't think about what really means behind the stories and what that actually means to psychology and inside of us. So, absorb from that what you will, but I think it's very, very important.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Now, bringing up Crowley, I think it's important that we, jump into this, and then after this, we'll take a break. But you have had the pleasure and the just massive task of keeping the OTO alive and helping it build. And he gave the look like me, but yeah, you had the honor of joining his great work at a time where it was starting to dwindle down, and through your work was able to get Aleister Crowley's work to a much broader audience, was able to get the OTO, and for those out there that don't know, that's Ordo Templi Orientis, get that lodge growing again, and still today is here and thriving. So can you tell us a little bit of what that experience, when you found home base in the OTO, how that was for your practice?
Well, it would have happened without me. Okay, it's Thelema and the new aeon. The magical formula of a new aeon is bigger than people, bigger than organizations, bigger than anything. But the OTO was when Crowley was alive. He headed up what started out as a mystical Masonic organization, a German Academy Masonica, which for a number of years, like in the 1880s, was an integral part or a fringe part of regular continental Freemasonry. Now, Masonry's always had an esoteric side to it. As a matter of fact, at the core of Masonry is esotericism and a kind of a special brand of European Kabbalah, and a true heir to the mystery schools of Western civilization. But Masonry is so big and such a big tent that you can be a perfectly successful and happy Freemason without technically taking any interest whatsoever in alchemy or other world religions and gods of other cultures and stuff. You can be a happy Mason without even getting into any of that. But if you're into that, it's a rich source of that. And the Ordo Templi Orientis, the founders of it, who wasn't Crowley, Karl Kellner, Theodor Reuss, Franz Hartmann, other kind of recognizable European Freemasons, were very, very interested in the mystical societies and the magical practices of the Far East and Tantra. Okay, and that even included what the Hindus were doing and what the Tibetans and Nepalese tantrics were doing, and unashamedly exploring the uses of the sexual energies, just like there are any other kind of energies. Okay. And so there was sort of this little Masonic club that said, okay, we're all Freemasons. We can keep secrets. I don't think most of our brothers are going to understand any of this stuff that we're talking about if we discuss sexual techniques in the same way that our brother Hindus do. Okay, like they won't get it that it's wholesome, normal, human stuff. So they created sort of the OTO, and Crowley became initiated into Ordo Templi Orientis. It never was more than like a dozen people. Okay, it wasn't a huge organization ever. It's bigger now than it's ever been. But the idea that they could explore these things, translate certain Eastern documents, figuring out how this and this is Shiva and Shakti, okay, and how this is the Anahata chakra, the heart chakra, okay, and this is the root chakra, and this is the navel chakra, and this is the okay. Crowley took over the OTO, and for a while they tried to get recognition from regular standard white bread European continental Freemasonry. But the OTO says, look, if we're going to do our stuff here, we got to open it up to everybody, no matter what their class is, no matter what their sex is, men and women, they deserve Masonry, at this level. And Continental Masonry at their convention said, sorry, no OTO in Masonry, and you're going to have to stop saying that you make Masons and things like that. And so the OTO was more or less, the founding fathers were more or less very discouraged because, shoot, it was the best stuff. And Crowley, more or less, one way or another, took over leadership of the OTO, changed the rituals, no longer make Masons, changed the structure of the rituals. And like Masonry, they're dramatic rituals. They're not like Golden Dawn rituals. You're not drawing pentagrams and strutting around and stuff like a Golden Dawn thing, but it's ceremonial magic in its own way, in the same way as the dramatic rituals of a Masonic initiation ceremony are. Okay, and Crowley and it was successful enough. And Crowley wrote a religious ceremony that was harmonious with the Masonic ceremonies of the OTO. And it's a beautiful ceremony that, in a sense, communicates in the most overt manner the central secret that the founding fathers of the OTO were so excited about. And it's a ceremony that if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you can see this wonderful technique of magic and theory of magic at work in the Roman Catholic Mass, in anything. You can. It's such a universal magical truth that you can see it yelling at you from the label of a ketchup bottle. But so Crowley invented this Gnostic Mass, which is for the public, where your grandmother can come.
Everybody can attend, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't even have to get into it. You don't have to trouble the left hemisphere of your brain. You could just sit there and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful Eucharistic ceremony with a host and wine and a priest and a priestess, and it's just inspiring. It's gorgeous, and in a sense, you get the essence of this great secret, and it's not just a secret for mammals and humanity. This is the same secret that's lighting the stars. Okay, it's big stuff. In the same way as the essence of Tantra, and the essence of Buddhism, and the essence of Hinduism is big stuff. Okay. But it's ripe for misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And Crowley's wild and crazy reputation didn't help matters, okay, as far as having initial good publicity for this awesome, sublime magic. But anyway, when Crowley died, in 1947, but OTO groups that did exist, and the only really going concern was it started in Vancouver with Wilfred Smith, and then moved down to the Hollywood, California area. That was the only active Crowley type lodge of OTO happening in the world, in a public way anyway. And when Crowley died, the leadership of the order passed to the Grand Treasurer General, who was Karl Germer. And Karl Germer observed the situation with like post-war consciousness of people. And he thought to himself, I think we ought to put the initiations and stuff on hold. I think we should put these Gnostic Mass things on hold, because we're going to get in trouble with, this was the McCarthy era in the United States, okay? And they're just not going to understand. So let's pour our resources into keeping Crowley's precious published works published and distributed. And then maybe 20 years down the line, if there are any of us left, we can start initiating again, And that's just what happened. Karl Germer died, and the leadership of the order passed to the Grady McMurtry, who had letters of authorization from Crowley that was given to him even before Karl took over, giving him the letters of authority to resurrect the order. And Grady reluctantly did this. He was in his 60s. He was happy teaching college in Washington, D.C. But he activated those letters of authorization, moved out to California, and teamed up with Phyllis Seckler. And they said, let's get the order going again. They published the Thoth Tarot deck. And on the promotional card of the Thoth Tarot deck, around 1972, 73, it had the OTO's post office box in Dublin, California, just a few miles down the road here. And I answered that letter. and I wrote them. And I eventually traveled up to Dublin and was initiated into the OTO just in their garage. And at the dinner afterwards, a wonderful, memorable dinner afterwards, I asked, well, where is everybody?
This is it.
And they pretty much said, this is it. We've got one other ninth degree, Helen Parsons Smith. And I go, Helen Parsons, Jack Parsons' wife, Wilfred Smith's wife. Wow. And I think Grady had probably initiated or gave somebody a Minerval before even, and who completely fell out of the picture. So we're pretty much stuck with me and Phyllis and Grady and Helen Parsons Smith. And then I did what I could to start initiating people myself as soon as I started getting the degrees to do that. Grady and Phyllis split, moved to Berkeley, formed a wonderful, wild sort of Grand Lodge around Grady in the Berkeley area. And I was chartered a couple months later for the first local lodge of the new OTO down in Southern California, and started doing classes in my home every week in order to learn magic myself. So.
No, that's amazing. I mean, that's truly, for the listeners out there, I mean, what a wonderful story to hear how that came together, and how so many historic figures from the past that you were connected with in one way or another that helped build so much. I mean, the influence, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, the influence of Aleister Crowley can't even be spoken of, because even people who don't follow his work don't realize how much his work has changed the currents of Western mystery tradition, how it's changed everything from the OTO to, even Masonry in a way, and changed things obviously as the Golden Dawn. And you mentioned, I mean, his teaching and having, Israel Regardie under him, and then Israel Regardie's work with the Golden Dawn. And just, it's so interesting, as you said, that there's that, and I've talked about it several times in the past, the perennial philosophy runs through everything. Aldous Huxley wrote that amazing book talking about how all of it's connected. Everything is connected, the different masses, the different practices. When you look at the bedrock of it, it's all the same. It's just beautiful symphonies of the same spirituality. And I'm glad you got to find it and be a part of that, because like I said, when you're living it, I'm sure you can't see it from the eyes of the rest of us. But like, I look at your story, I look at what you've done and you've accomplished, and it's so profound to your time period up to now, and to what will come even after we're both gone. I mean, there'll be people years to come studying your work or influences from your work, and might not even know what it originally came from. So it changes the entire tide of the world. And I appreciate what you've done, obviously, with the OTO, with Crowley's work. I mean, your expansive release on the Thoth Tarot deck and the understanding of it, which is a whole show in itself. It's been pivotal.
Well, like I said, I certainly didn't do it alone. As a matter of fact, I probably didn't do nearly as much as everybody else, because there was a wonderful group that soon was established in New York City, Chicago, and other places around the country, and people literally dedicating their lives to making this OTO, I believe, is probably arguably currently the world's largest overtly magical society in the world. And it's in, how many Grand Lodges are there? There's lodges it's an international organization now in England and Croatia and Italy and Australia and Canada. Well, I don't know if Canada has a Grand Lodge yet, but It's gotten really big because the time has come. It's just Crowley is understood by enough people to not be freaked out, and those people are doing such remarkable work. But it's like the work itself has taken over, and as much as the each individual that would take on permanent or temporary leadership thing is just working in harmony with the great movement. Okay, and who knows what the future is going to be, because Thelema, the whole idea of the magic of Thelema, is intensely individualistic. People ask me, "Hey, is the OTO a cult?" And I said, "Well, if you think about a cult being a cult of one, okay, you're your own cult. You know, they take 'do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law' quite seriously. So it's not quite. It doesn't fit into a big charismatic leadership role for anybody. Everybody is respected, kind of in the same way as when you see. Did you see the movie Dances with Wolves?
Yes.
Well, they're all sitting around the communal teepee, and they're discussing what to do with Kevin Costner, and what to do about the army, and what to do about things. And one of the braves says something, really militant and violent, and we've got to resist and things like that. And the old chief, nods his head and he says, no one can tell another person what to do, but here are my thoughts. And it was such a civilized way of saying, I respect even your wild and craziness, but and that's how a thelemic group, when it's well oiled, operates. You can have all sorts of an infinite spectrum of individual thoughts and ideas and such, but we're all agreed to that one principle that if you really know what your will is, if you really know what your will is, you have no other right but to do it.
Well, and it works because we are all shining stars, so everybody is their own individual star. Everybody's doing their own will, and if you do operate under that umbrella of certain principles, the machine will run. Even though everyone's a leader, you don't have to have one leader. You all are leaders working together, and that's a beautiful thing.
That is a beautiful thing, and and that, of course, obviously does not mean do what you want, do what your whim, do
Often mistaken is that, though. So many people don't understand that because they don't look further into it. Oh, he was just saying to just do anything you want to do and run wild. I'm like that. No, that's you. No.
As a matter of fact, it's
the opposite.
The ultimate in self-discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't understand. It is the extreme discipline. To do your will is not running rampant. It's to conquer all of those lower vibrational things that hold you down so that you can rise above all of that. So as Lon just said, it's the ultimate discipline of self, of mind, of body, of spirit, to be able to live your true will. So, for those that want to use that, you can always take something and flip it on its head and try to make it mean something else. But that doesn't mean that's what it meant. It certainly didn't in this case. So no, that's awesome. Before we go any further, we do have a comment that I want to read here in a minute, but we're going to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we'll read this comment. We'll talk a little bit about goetic magic, and then the rest will be certainly about your new book, The Accidental Christ, which, folks, if you haven't read it yet, I love it. It is phenomenal. You have to pick it up, and we're going to talk about it here in just a couple minutes. But we're going to go ahead and go to a break here. Let's do a screen share, and let's go ahead and do a break here. We'll be right back on Knights of the Nephilim. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Arachne Arcane Services. Arachne Arcane Services is a husband. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Arachne Arcane Services. Arachne Arcane Services and White Baron and Baronessa Arachne. With over 40 years of practical experience, they are masters of the occult arts through various practices and paradigms, such as necromancy, high magic, black witchcraft, and more. They are published authors under their own publishing house, the Arcane Press. They offer books, courses, spell work, consultations, ritual tools, and more. All of their products are handmade of the highest quality material and empowered through ancient rites. If you wish to know more about them or their business, or you require their services, please feel free to contact them at arachnearcaneservices.com. That is Arachne, Araignee, arcaneservices.com. And if you use promo code KOTN, you will get 10% off of your overall order or purchase as a special highlight of them being a sponsor of this show. Thank you so much, guys. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Arsnosis. Arsnosis was formed by Diogo Cells Pimentel, an artist located in northeast of Brazil in the state of Bahia, which is the birthplace of the greatest artist in the country. Involved with occultism since 2009, starting in shamanic practices until reaching Western occultism through the paths of Luciferianism, Thelema, Goetic ceremonial magic, angelic and Enochian magic. All right, we are back, folks, on Knights of the Nephilim. We've been hanging out for the last about an hour and a half with Lon Milo DuQuette, talking everything from Kabbalah to, Eastern mystery traditions to Aleister Crowley and the OTO and everything in between. So if you've missed anything, don't fret. Watch to the end of the live episode. You can always go back and stream the entire thing, and I always advise doing so. You can download it to your device and share it around. Watch it as many times as you want. Have fun with it. If you've missed any of it, like I said, that'll give you a chance to go back later on. We have two other things I want to discuss tonight on the episode, and one of them, ironically enough, someone messaged right before we were getting ready to take the break, and I'll pop that comment up here. It says, "Love the book, Lon, My Life with the Spirits. Did you ever take an interest in the adversarial path given your early life experiences?" And that correlates with one of the things that I was going to talk about this evening, which is a very powerful path of magic that's always been, my main side of things, which is more of the left-hand path side, which is goetic, evocation, and invocation. And I know that you could probably tell us a story how some want to step into the circle, they want to try a ritual, but they might be a little bit scared to do so or worry what might go wrong. And there always is going to be things going wrong. So can you tell us a little bit about your original conjuration with Orobas and what kind of happened there and what that has done for you as far as working with the goetic spirits in your life, what your thoughts are on that style of magic?
Sure. A lot of people think it's low magic because it deals with, the blind forces, or maybe not so blind forces of what's considered infernal spirits. Okay. But wow, man, the infernal spirits are the things that do all the heavy lifting in the whole universe. Okay.
Yes.
All of the heavy lifting is done by infernal spirits. In the fable of King Solomon didn't, go off and hire Halberton to build the temple of the great temple of God. He hired demons to do it. Okay.
Absolutely.
And that tells us a story, that tells a great truth. It reveals a great truth. There is no low. The infernal is your workshop. Okay. But you got to give the workmen, these rough and tumble workmen, you got to give them something productive to do. Okay. Otherwise, they just exercise their explosive blind force along the lines of least resistance. And should you identify what you want them to do? Because until you direct them to do something for your benefit, for your growth, for your enlightenment, for your happiness, they're going to keep on working against you.
Yes.
Not because they're mean, it's just because they're just freaking bored. Okay. And they have no, they have to exercise their force. So the magician directs them. But that first means that the magician must master the magician.
Yep.
In order to have the self-confidence. And that's exactly what it is. It's, you think you're getting permission from Jehovah. Well, you need to be the absolute reflection of the supreme deity, whatever that is, in order to bamboozle the spirit, an infernal spirit, into doing something constructive for you, something helpful to you, some heavy lifting that you have determined is your will to get done. Before you bamboozle the spirit into thinking it has the authority to do it, you have to bamboozle yourself into thinking you have the authority to do it.
I think
And
that's a step that's often skipped by a lot of people too, is they want to go into magic and they don't master themselves before they try to master things much beyond themselves, and that's
right.
where a lot of problems seem to happen.
Well, my first Goeshiki vocation, I hadn't mastered myself. Okay, my teacher Phyllis Seckler said, "Oh, get your holy guardian angel first, and then you'll know you won't have to do things like that." And and she's absolutely right. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to have some kind of industrial accident? You know, that might teach me a great lesson about what this is all about? Or am I just going to say, oh no, I'll wait until I get my holy guardian angel? No, I went ahead on. My back was against the wall. Failure on this operation for me was going to be unthinkable. So I guess that was enough to have me engage in what I can only describe, and what I did describe in my Life of the Spirits, as a nonstop comedy of errors of my first Goetic evocation. Not only that, but I had a little nervous breakdown where the spirit wouldn't come, and I had to have a soliloquy with myself of Shakespearean gravitas. I had to look at myself, look at you. You can't even put food on the table for your little family here. You're going to not be able to pay the rent next Friday. You've got no car, you've got no job. You've spent 28 years as a musician. Actually 14 years as a musician, and you just quit that because you really didn't have the guts to pay any real dues. Okay. And I just started, in my frustration that the spirit didn't come after I conjured again and again, that I turned that rage on myself. Just look at you. Oh, you know, you're in serious trouble. And this is your idea? This is your idea to whip up a genie to help you out? That's pathetic. Yeah. You're a loser, okay? And I started to curse myself. Damn you, damn you, damn you, damn you, damn you. And it wasn't the spirit I was damning, it was myself. And what I didn't know in the background was the reason I was evoking that spirit, because that was the spirit, that was the force of my own indolence. Everything I was beating myself up for, that spirit had embodied my whole life. I didn't know this at the time. I just knew I had to come to grips with, and I had a little nervous breakdown. And nervous breakdowns will put you into an altered state of consciousness. And in that altered state of consciousness, you saw the spirit appear in the triangle. It just pixelated right there in the triangle, a beautiful little almost comic horse with oversized ears and big eyes. And I didn't know what to do. It was actually happening. My magic was actually working. And I had anointed my head with oil of Abramelin because I thought that was the right thing to do. And oil of Abramelin is mostly a concentrated cinnamon extract, which burns your skin. And I had a whole bunch of it on the top of my head under my funny little yarmulke that I had on. And the sweat bead rolled off my scalp, over my forehead, off my nose, and into my eye.
Mm-hmm.
And And it was a situation where, gee, I'm seeing a demon. And instantly it's like a hot poker in my eye, which is, it's just right out of a Vincent Price, Peter Lorre movie, you know? And I had an industrial accident. I had a magical industrial accident, and the whole thing was I had to, pinch my eyes closed and just, bark stay in the triangle, and then get myself somehow to the bathroom, which luckily was the adjacent room, and stepped in the shower with my hat on, and washed it out and everything else. I didn't lose my eyesight, but my eyes were just demonically red by the time it was over. And I walked back into the circle eventually, and then I had a real heart-to-heart talk with this spirit. And I said, why did you burn my eyes? He said, I didn't burn your eyes. You burned your own eyes. Only an idiot would. And then I realized how you talk to a spirit. You talk to a spirit on the same wavelength you ask the question on. The answer returns as soon as you're finished asking the question. It's an internal dialogue. It's amazing, absolutely amazing, but that's how it works.
Yep, they pull it right out of you. It's a very natural. You're finishing. It's there as you finish, and it's interesting, and that's why I said earlier it's very much a part of you, external, but very much internal. But how do you explain that mechanism of the internality? I don't quite know exactly, and I don't think anybody does, and that's what makes it so special.
It takes place in an environment where time isn't moving the way it usually moves, too. But anyway, long story short, I said, well, yeah, it was pretty stupid of me and everything else. I said, look, you got to turn my life around. And I just had a heart-to-heart talk. I sat down in the circle. You're not supposed to. I sat down. I said, look, my life is, and I need it turned around. I need it turned around immediately. Look, I don't have the rent paid. My wife's in the kitchen cutting apples in half to feed our son for this day and then that day. I don't have the dignity that I need to be a family man. Okay, I got out of the music business because I wanted to be a family man and not a strung out musician. And so I had a heart-to-heart talk. I said, the book says you can do this. It says you can give me the dignity I'm looking for. And it says prelacies too, and I didn't know what the hell a prelacy was, but it had other good things the spirit was supposed to do. It favor of friends and enemies and knowledge of the creation of the world, which is perfect for Kabbalah. And it's just a happy guy. I don't see the downside of this guy, except he burns your eyes. And I said, so I want you to do that. And the spirit said, yeah, okay. I said, well, I want you to do it. I want you to do it within 24 hours. I want to see you working within 24 hours. And it goes, okay. And up until then, the spirit's answer always came on the wavelength of my question. But this time, without me noticing it, it said something back to me without being a response to my question. It said, 24 hours isn't too very long. Why don't we give it a week? I might need a week. And I didn't notice the breach in formula there about who was talking to who. And I said, That's reasonable. Okay, a week. And the second I said that, it said a month. A month.
Tried to fool you.
Yeah. And I said, well, a month might not be okay. Okay, a month. I'll figure out this other stuff. And then it said, how about 6 months? In 6 months, something will bound to happen that will make you think that your magic has worked. Because if you don't give me that long and you don't give me long enough for something to happen where you could say that you're a success in magic, not only will you be a failure in life like you are right now, you'll be a failure in magic too. And then I thought, these aren't my thoughts.
Yep.
These aren't my thoughts. It's coming from you, you little bastard. Okay. You've been doing stuff like this I got myself in this position because I would give it a week, give it a month, oh, no, you don't, I want you to do it in an hour. You'll do it in an hour, right? And he goes, oh yeah, okay. It's just like, oh, but I had to try, I've been trying.
That's part of their nature, yeah, to try to push the bounds of, like you said, because if you're willing to give up that inch, you're willing to give up that mile, and if you do that, then it's a slippery slope. So that's where you said you have to master yourself to have that firmness. And you hear a lot of people say, oh, I never talk down to a spirit, or I'm never demanding of a spirit. Well, then you never actually have magic happen.
Yeah.
Being its friend is great out there, folks that say that. But there are times that even in a friendly manner of reverence to a spirit, you still have to take the control of the operation, or it will take control of the operation, and you won't be on the successful end of it. There is a point where you have to step forward and control the circumstances. And that's how the magic happens. A lot of people that say differently, you're not actually practicing. That's might be why you're not getting the results you want. So you have to take the reins.
Yeah, either you conjure the demon or the demon is conjuring you.
Yes.
Okay? And the reason that whatever the reason was you chose that specific spirit was you had a sense that it was the very spirit that could solve your problem. Because in a sense, the spirit was your problem, is your problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's appropriate to call it forth. And you want to get on the good side of things that in the past have been working against you.
Well, I love that you said that, because that is, I mean, when you look at their offices and what they do, that is the hindrance that you're experiencing in life, either directly what they do or the opposite. If it has the capability to heal, it has the capability to kill, and vice versa. So when you look at those roadblocks in your life and you see it fits one of those in one direct or indirect way, that is the psychological part, folks, of your own psyche inside that you're working with. But it does get projected through a external visual lens, and you are then talking to yourself, but not yourself. And
Yeah.
it change everything internally inside you and within your life. And if that's, once again, I mean, when Lon said you have to master yourself, it's not only to go in and deal with these currents, but also the current itself. You're mastering yourself, because that is a part of you. So it's always about that self mastery. You let that slip for a single second, and as I said, it'll start to crumble quickly. And I wish more people understood that. There's a lot of books out there that are fantasy these days in the occult scene, and they misdirect people on working with spirits properly. You have to have respect, but you also have to, once again, have that dominance. That's an essential part. I don't care what anybody says. You have to have that as a part of your ritual, or you're destined for failure. And you showed, and I think if I remember correctly, when you said no, an hour, it sure enough came through within an hour, and your entire life changed from that point.
It certainly did. And I would within 90 days, I'd find out what a prelacy was. A prelacy is a church office like a bishop. And when I went back up to Northern California for my next OTO degree. I was consecrated a bishop in the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, which is a bona fide wandering bishop apostolic thing. So
yes, no, it's a very high position within a very powerful system of the OTO. So that's amazing. I mean, what a weird experience, you know. It was telling you ahead of time what's
yeah.
happening, you didn't even know.
And that little guy has first of all earned my respect. Okay, and in a sense, over the years, uh, I think that I've done my best to do what everyone theoretically should be able to do with their Goetic spirits, and that is redeem them into an angel of light.
I love that you said that. That's another part that I think a lot of people misunderstand is, you know, when you work with the goetic spirits, I've always thought that you are bringing them to your level, you know, vice versa, but you are also raising them up in frequency. Not only are you yourself, folks, raising in vibration and frequency to a higher consciousness, you are taking the goetic beings and raising them from their lower vibrational state to higher vibrational angelic states of consciousness. And people want to talk about this battle between the devils and demons and angels, and the battle, just like with ourselves, is an internal battle. It's inside, and you're raising yourself, you're raising them, and there's a lot of connections that can be made there. Why do you think, you know, and this could be completely left field, but it's my own belief that when you look at the 72, you know, angels of the Shem Hemiforish angel system, and you look at the 72 goetic demons, they could be considered almost reflections of one another. That you're looking at the reflection of the water and working with the reflection in the water here in the manifest, the lower vibration, the ones, as Lon says, doing all the heavy lifting, and then you can raise them up to where they're the actual essence of the divinity and the angels. So, you know, that's an important part as well.
Now I don't know if you can see this because it's backwards, but the 36 small cards, the 2s through 10s of each suit, represent 10-degree periods, decans of the zodiac. And there are 2 Goetic spirits for each decan, one for the daytime and one for the nighttime. And the angels of the Shemhamferish are assigned in 5-degree periods, the first 5 degrees of the decan and the second 5 degrees of the decan. And they're right there in every small card tarot.
Yes, they are.
One of the 36 Goetic squares, or the Enochian squares.
And that's why I love this.
That's another show.
That is another show. We could get very deep on that, because I mean that's very powerful to work with them in that sense, and that philosophical understanding. And folks, you know, you can do goetic magic in different ways. I mean, if you look at Mather's and Crawley's version of the Lemegeton, you know, and then in other versions that have come out and surfaced over the years, there's different ways to work with these spirits. One way that I've always found pretty profound is working with the 4 cardinal direction daemons: Orions, Paimons, Omegan, and Egan, or Egan and Amaimon. When you work with them and you're in their quadrant and you work with the specific decans and the lunar mansions, you can call that spirit under the tutelage of its governing spirit at the right time, at the right day of the right lunar mansion, and you are going to have a much more powerful experience. You can call any spirit right now and still bring them here in the material plane, but if you do it under the right celestial bodies at the right timing, under the right understanding, I've said this time and time again, it's the difference between having a wine cooler and a shot of moonshine. It's a very different, powerful experience that most people don't understand. And another tidbit of mysticism, folks, that a lot of people might not be aware of: why do they show spirits with different animal heads? Well, because they do coalesce with the decans and the zodiacal signs. So when it shows it having one head of a ram and one head of a bull, well, it's because it's between the zodiacal signs of Aries and Taurus. That's why its depiction is a ram and a bull and a man, and it takes on the attributes of Taurus and of Aries. these things go into the demons, into the psychological makeup of our understanding of what we're conjuring or summoning and what we receive out of it, and its influence celestially as to what it can do for us in its offices. So there's reasons behind all of these things that I think a lot of people just maybe not aware of, but they do. They're the mirrored opposite of one another, the Shem and the Goetian demons.
And if you're sort of artistically inclined, you can also use your understanding of that decant or that 5-degree period, if you will, and the astrological rulership of it, and create your own image for your own angels.
Yep.
Okay, for your own spirit. You can because they are your own. People say, well, I want to whip up Orobos because you had such good luck with Orobos. Yeah, he says as he blinks his eyes. But your Orobos is not my Orobos.
Exactly. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And people don't understand that. Yeah. I've taught that before, where what we read, what lore we know, what mysticism we know, the depth of our vocabulary, the depth of our symbology set, and the depth of our just perspective and place of pivot is going to make each and every encounter very different. You and 4 other adepts can all stand side by side using the same ritual formula on the same night of the same celestial signs and summon the same spirit. And everyone is going to have an absolutely different experience. Though they are coming from the same ocean, they are very, very different rivers coming from that ocean. And right. We have different experiences. They're very much unique to you.
I couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I think without further delay, we could talk about this things for days, but I think we need to jump into this last segment here and talk about your new book. And I want you to tell the listeners out there what the new book's about and your mindset in creating it, because this was originally a book released years ago to a select few, and now added to, reworked, and put out as what I consider a absolute gem of the. And as I left the comment on Amazon, the greatest story never told, because I love what you've done with it. I mean, I think it just makes perfect sense as someone who grew up in a Catholic home and went to Catholic school and was forced this story down my throat. To hear a side of it that had humor, but also a lot of depth to it was just beautiful, man. I want to thank you for that. Tell everybody out there what you've created.
It is called An Accidental Christ. Okay, and it just came out earlier this month. And the subtitle is The Story of Jesus as Told by His Uncle. Okay, did you know Jesus had an uncle? Well, historically, yeah, he really did. And it might be hard for you to distinguish when I'm making stuff up and when it's actually historic. As a matter of fact, it's more historic than it is things that I'm making up. Basically, I was taking a shower one day, and for some reason, I got off on the story from one of the 4 Gospels. I think it was John, but don't quote me on that at the moment, where Jesus supposedly turned water into wine at the wedding feast at Cana. And his mother was there, and all of his disciples were there. Well, if you know a little something about the family of Jesus and everything else, they weren't poor people. Okay. As a matter of fact, Joseph was royalty. Hebrew royalty, and Mary, her family, owned the land. Her tribe, Benjamin, owned the land whereon the great temple was built. Jesus's uncle was another uncle was Zechariah, the high priest of Israel. These are well-connected people, and they make it sound in the Gospels as if they're poor carpenters and stuff. They're not. And when they start calling Jesus King of the Jews, it's not because they had some mystical thing about Jesus being King of the Jews. It's because he was literally, hereditarily born genetically, biologically heir to the throne of David.
Yep, the Davidian king.
The Davidian king. With a background like that, when you now just sort of straight through read the Gospels, things start to make more sense. And it's like supernatural interpretations of events that were in the beginning just sort of ordinary, unsupernatural occurrences. I more or less try to explain and describe in as much detail as I possibly can along the lines of a story, a novel to keep you awake. You know, I can't write things that don't get goofy every once in a while. But let's see here. Got Jesus and Joseph and Mary's noble bloodline and their unusual marriage, the nobility and the wealth of both families of Joseph and Mary, the international interest of his nativity, including gifts from foreign embassies, the family's flight to Egypt and what that was about, and the fact that it was likely that Jesus was educated in an esoteric monastic community that we'd either call the Therapeuti or the Essenes. Okay, all of this before he was 30 some years old, and the coup began. Okay, so that's the story. That's the story. The greatest story. What'd you say?
Greatest story never told.
Never told. Okay,
Until now.
And it's fun, and there are. It's told sort of with a straight face, but you can see where my face breaks into a smile every once in a while. But anyway, it's Accidental Christ. It's sure to outrage conservative or evangelical types, not because it says anything that is non-biblical, but it just sort of explains how biblical things can be quite easily explained in the context of a remarkable combination of spiritual and political story. So
I know it's a beautiful blaspheme. You know, I love it. Because as you said, it's so easy to take this story and play the game of telephone. And over the years, the thousands of years, everyone adds to it. And it's just so magnificent and so miraculous. And there's all these miracles. And was it the story of by mouth to mouth to mouth got exaggerated? And they were really simple occurrences that still were profound to the people there. But once they told the neighbors who told the did you hear about this man named Jesus and he fed 1,000 people at one time? Well, okay, but how did he do it? Did you really watch? You know, so these were different times, folks, and that story carried along, and it's very resonant. And it's true Lon Milo DuQuette fashion, because as you said, it's a serious work. It's thought-provoking. I think it's pivotal for everyone to read it. I've always loved the story of Jesus and always found the Bible fascinating. And I loved the different takeaways from it and the different parables and the underlying things there. And I love how you kind of dig down that deeper level and say, okay, well, you know the story, but do you know the underlying facts that made the story? And what's interesting, and I won't give it away, but when I was younger, I'd always hear that John the Baptist, the mad prophet, and Jesus were a part of a secret society order that would take an initiatory service of dying to themselves for 3 days and being rose from the dead. And that they had a very different perspective, almost like the Knights Templar. There was even cross references of the Baphomet and all these other things that I heard when I was younger. And I always found that very resonant to me, that I'm like, there's this whole story people aren't getting, and then obviously as more research and analysis got released on the scrolls from Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Nag Hammadi texts and everything, and I started to dig in them as I got older. I'm like, oh, there's just this beautiful, mind-bending experience out there that so many people don't even know about, or they just turn a blind eye to because it's not canonical.
Right.
And then when I read in your book the story of Lazarus and the 3 days, it just blew me back. I'm like, oh wow, had a flashback of a kid hearing the story of Jesus, his death really being an initiatory thing. Now it's a little bit different in this, and that's great, but you nailed that with the Lazarus thing. So I love it, Lon. I think you did an absolutely wonderful job on it. Anybody listening out there, please go pick it up. You can find it at pretty much most retailers. You can order it quick on Amazon. It'll be here in 2-3 days. I crunched this book out in about 30 hours. That's around working and a family and everything. I just went in on it because I was on the edge of my seat. So it is a fantastic read, as all Lon's books are, mix of humor and very deep understandings. And I want to thank you, obviously, for what you have put out there, because it has been an influence on my practice for 15 years now. And I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for the kind words indeed.
So what else can we look forward to coming out? We'll wrap up with what you think we should be watching out for from you. You're always putting up videos and teaching. I love that about you. Every day or every other day, you're putting up videos for people to jump in and learn things, which I think is important with symbology. I know a couple weeks ago I was on one where something often missed is the Hebrew letters, the 3, the 7, and the 12, and how the 3 are the different directions, the 7 are the lines, and the 7 walls, around us, and then the 12 lines making up the cube of reality. So many people don't see that these days, and I don't understand. Yeah, right there. So many people don't understand these not so simple, but simple understandings that are there when you look at older text or look at someone like you who still puts out this type of work. Because as I said, I hate to be a hater, but there's a lot of people putting out fanciful text these days that skip a lot of this. It's just fluff. So thank you for those lessons. But aside from your daily lessons that you put out, what can people expect coming forward from you?
I'm leaning toward a part 3 of the Chicken Kabbalah.
Oh, wow. Awesome. That's my favorite books you've written, honestly. I love the tone that you've taken with it and how you told that. It blew my mind.
So we've got the Chicken Kabbalah, and then we've got the son of Chicken Kabbalah, which is the process of a 3-degree self-initiation program that's from a stepping stone from the Chicken Kabbalah. But I'm not sure that the rabbi is. I think the reports of his disappearance might have been exaggerated. So we'll see if he pops up again from behind the chicken coop.
I love that.
See if there might be a part 3, episode 3 of the tale of Rabbi Lamed Ben Clifford, Chicken Kabbalah 3. But at the moment, I'm trying to put my words together, because the OTO is having their national convention, which they used to have every 2 years, but they've had to skip it because of the pandemic. So I haven't had a big OTO convention, and it'll be in Denver this time. And I have to prepare a few words to try to live up to my last speeches.
Always have to outdo yourself.
Yeah. And other than that, I single-handedly put together an exercise bike out in the patio there, and my wife is going to make me ride that thing.
I think I actually seen a video earlier this morning. You were saying, I'm about to go outside and try to tackle this task of building the exercise bike. So I'm glad to see you were able to accomplish that. It's not always an easy thing. So
yeah, I even got on it and it didn't fall apart. So and I didn't have any parts left over. So
Oh,
that's
there we go. It's a good start then. So I feel pretty confident that it might work out for you.
yeah.
Well, no, I want to thank you, obviously, as I said, for coming on the show this evening, for everything you've done for the esoteric and occult community. Folks, if you're out there and you've never read any of Lon's work, please jump on and buy a couple of his books. You'll love them. There's audio books out there. He always has the greatest people read his books too. I love the different voices. The Chicken Kabbalah, the person you had read that on your audio book is phenomenal. Just forget
Isn't
about
he great? He sounds like he sounds like the rabbi. I love him.
Yeah, that is my favorite. Like I said, I mean, he nailed that on the audiobook, but I've both read the books that I have, all the audiobooks you've done. I've been a big follower of your work. And like I said, it was an honor to get to sit with you this evening. Support him out there, folks. Check out his teachings and what he's doing, and pick up An Accidental Christ today and hear about the greatest story never told until now. Other than that, I will say have a wonderful evening, and we'll jump into our last two commercials here and finish up for the night. You can catch us in 2 weeks with author John Vermillion talking about his new book of Azazel and about how he is looking at it from an angelic perspective, which will be very different than a lot of people look. I mean, obviously he is an angel, but he's talking not on the darker sides. And we'll be jumping into the gnosis he was able to gain through working with this spirit. So I look forward to that conversation, and I appreciate each and every one of you for your support of the show. And other than that, we will catch you next time here on Knights of the Nephilim. Signing out. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, The Telemancer. Let me first tell you a little bit about their owner, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about them. James Hunter Ralston has been a member of the Order of the Voltec, starting in 2008 and progressing through several degrees, last serving as head of the Outer Order. The Order of the Voltec is an offshoot of a pylon of the Temple of Set, originated to study and practice several forms of the sorceress methods centering on techniques used by Mexican and other Central American priests and magicians. Many of the techniques involved were popularized in the late 1970s and 80s by Carlos Castaneda. Over the decades since his first experience with magic, his desire has grown into the creation and use of what other shamanic sorcerers term as power objects, talismans, amulets, totems, and other powerful objects. His interests expanded to the degree that he chose to become an apprentice of several Appalachia's premier craftspeople and learn the art of metalcraft to produce power objects for both himself and select patrons. He does work with gold, pewter, silver, and sometimes other metals as well. He has been doing this for over 8 years. He does create talismans, pendants, rings, altarpieces, and more, almost all exclusively by custom commission. And you can check out his stunning work at facebook.com/thetelemancer1. Again, that is facebook.com/thetelemancer1. All as one word. Thank you so much. Right, guys. And for the last one, we don't have a commercial made yet, and I'll be having that by next episode. It is to our creative director and my good friend, Natasha Sarver. Little Shop of Lilith is a metaphysical and occult shop run in Butler, Pennsylvania. And Natasha has been a practicing witch for 2 decades and started Little Shop of Lilith in 2020 with a brick and mortar opening at the end of 2021. What started as intention oils for friends quickly expanded into an online business, and now what regulars lovingly refer to as a local cult. With a background in education and mental health, Natasha's main goal was to be able to offer affordable mental health services to her community. She is a certified emotional intelligence life coach and is currently obtaining her master's in metaphysical sciences and spiritual counseling. Aside from the many products that the shop offers, clients can get counseling and mentorship, intuitive energy work, tarot readings, spell work, and more. There are many different activities monthly, from group rituals to 101 classes, full courses, and guest speakers. Little Shop of Lilith encourages people to step into their own power, staying unapologetically authentic in a mission of understanding the integration of both light and dark in the soul, and taking a no bullshit approach to both magic and healing. I ask that you check out her shop, The Telemancer, Goetic Impressions, Arsenosis, Belladonna's Botanicals, Arachne Arcane Services, and Limitless Liberations, who we didn't get a chance to play their commercial this evening. Support all of them. They all do great work. And once again, support Mr. DuQuette and everything that he does. We want to thank him for coming on the show this evening, and we will catch you in 2 weeks with John Vermillion. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and we'll see you then.